Democrats will provide a majority of our majority as it relates to funding Israel, humanitarian assistance, Ukraine, and our allies in the Indo-Pacific. It remains to be seen what Republicans will do.
That was House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries after Democrats joined Republicans yesterday to advance an aid package of foreign bills and providing assistance to Israel, Ukraine, and other U.S. allies. In just a few hours, Congress is expected to vote on those bills. House Speaker Mike Johnson's support of the aid package may put his job in jeopardy now that at least 3 Republican members have announced their support for a motion to vacate the chair. He'll almost certainly need Democratic members, to bail him out. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina. He's also a Biden-Harris campaign co-chair. Mr. Leader, welcome. It's good to see you, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Good seeing you.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was welcome. Okay, so you actually voted against advancing the foreign aid bills yesterday. Why did you do that, and how are you going to vote on final passage of these bills?
Well, I voted against the rule,
yes, the rule.
Which is sort of traditional. When you've been the House Majority Whip, you get used to voting against rules. And there are a couple of things in there. I particularly don't like the fact that we are treating a significant portion of the monies to Ukraine as a loan, albeit forgivable. I just think that we need to just stand up for our allies. And Ukraine is an ally, may not be a member of NATO, but they've been trying to be a member of NATO for a long time. And the NATO members are supporting Ukraine. And we need to be supporting our NATO members. So there are a couple of things in that rule that irritate me a little bit, but I will be voting for the package.
Mm-hmm. Can I have one follow-up question, sure. Michael? It's just, you know, in the previous iterations of the bill, obviously this is not what the Senate sent. This is not what passed the Senate. The money that was allocated for Ukraine was the majority of that money was going to go to the Pentagon, so that the Pentagon could buy weapons and ammunition and parts made in America and then send that to Ukraine. What is different now in terms of it being a loan? Are they loaning money to the Pentagon? Can you break that down for folks?
Well, not all of it is a loan. I think somewhere around $10, $12 billion. And it's the part that deals with infrastructure issues and the rebuilding. Even that, to me, is a little bit of an insult. When you're talking about protecting our allies, our relationships, and our reputation around the world, we ought not be setting that up as a loan.
It's interesting, Congressman, to watch the evolution of Speaker Johnson and the reality of the various moments that have coalesced around Israel, certainly around Ukraine, hit him square in the eye. I want to play for you some sound from the Speaker on Capitol Hill yesterday on whether he's worried about his job. Let's take a listen.
Are you worried about your job?
No, don't worry. I just do my job.
Is it time to call MTG's bluff and just put the motion to vacate on the floor?
Look, we'll see what happens. I'm going to do my job. I'm not deterred by threats, and we're going to do the right thing and let the chips fall where they may.
I'm going to do the right thing. He's doing the right thing, may pay a political price within his own caucus for it. How are Democrats assessing the politics of this moment? McCarthy's a very different, was a very different consideration.
Yeah.
This one is I think, of more value to Democrats because of the fact that you have a speaker who is not just, you know, in a precarious situation, but actually is trying to do the right thing now.
Absolutely. And I think we'll have to wait and see. If this is an evolution rather than the revolution, then I'm inclined to be supportive, though I'm going to follow the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries. He's in the room. I'm not in those rooms anymore. And I will talk with him, or continue to talk with him, to see exactly how we ought to conduct ourselves. But let me say this. After this vote is over today, I'm interested in seeing how the Speaker reacts to the votes. If you recall, what got Kevin McCarthy in trouble was the way he reacted to the votes.
His response
the
after
next
the vote. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm going to wait to see.
He effectively threw Democrats under the bus.
On the Sunday show, he did. He was like, Democrats are a threat to democracy.
It didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so I will hope that the Speaker has, in fact, evolved. And if he has, it'll be lasting.
And there won't be a need for revolution.
That's exactly right.
Congressman, I'm going to ask you to put on your Biden-Harris co-chair hat. There was an op-ed in the New York Times about Vice President Harris that I want to read to you. This is by Charles Blow. He writes, "The Kamala Harris moment has arrived, being a trusted voice in favor of reproductive rights and against Republicans determined to restrict or eliminate them may be the greater contribution she can make to Biden's reelection bid and to maintaining national stability." Your sense at this moment of the role that Vice President Harris is poised to play on this campaign?
Well, I think Charles Blow is correct in this point. I don't think it just arrived. She's been there for quite some time. People seem to just be focused, just be listening. But Kamala Harris has been an incredibly effective vice president, an incredibly effective voice. And she got her footing way back in the beginning with the help of Simone. And so I'm very pleased with what she's doing. And so she didn't just get there. She's been there for a while, and I'm glad to see now that the country is focusing on it.
You know, I mean, I think it's not the part about me, but the important point is that this is two people on the ticket, and it's something that the Republicans love to talk about. We heard a lot about it in the Republican presidential primary, and it was Governor Haley who would talk about, former Ambassador Haley, who would talk about President Harris, and a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Vice President Harris. But they truly are a ticket, and it is true. A vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris because they are running together. She is the Vice President of the United States of America. What are you hearing out there as you are traveling and talking to voters about this ticket, this campaign, and what voters want to see?
Things are coming together very, very well. The fact of the matter is people are beginning to focus now. I think that you, or the whole weekend team, has been talking about the lack of focus that there was in the beginning. Now people are seeing things. They are now listening. They are drawing contrasts between Biden and Trump. And I'm very pleased with the way those results are. I've seen these new numbers, and people are beginning to take a hard look at where we're going to go as to the future.
So, speaking of the future, you've got very important races coming up for House members this fall. I think smart analysis is showing that the Democrats are very well primed to take back the leadership of the House. Senate is a little bit more of a play there. And may be difficult, but you do have the momentum. You do have the opportunity. How do you see the various issues out there coalescing around what a second term for Joe Biden will look like, particularly given some of the dissension that still exists among many Americans, particularly some in the Democratic Party, the progressive left, around Gaza, for example, or, student loan debt. How do you paint the broader picture? Because that's what Republicans are doing. They're painting the broader picture. They're not dealing with the specifics. They're talking more broadly about how bad things are. My God, the country's falling apart. How dare you employ 300,000 people last month, right?
How dare you bring murders down by 20%?
Well, thank you, Simone, because you went exactly where I want to go. You've got reporting out by Axios right now showing the number of homicides have plummeted in major U.S. cities, nearly 20%. And yet you would not know that in listening to your opponents. How do you level up that conversation and say, okay, let's check this here, because we're not going to get stuck on stupid, right? We're not going to sit here and pretend that, crime has run away in the cities, et cetera.
Well, I think you have to look globally to begin with. Let's look at where the president has been. The president has been, for instance, on this whole issue in the Middle East. He's been for a two-state solution for a long, long time. And he has made it very clear to Netanyahu that we are not going to be offensive as we go into the future in the Middle East. We are going to protect Israel's right to defend itself. But when we come to these responses, he's letting Netanyahu know exactly where the country stands. So on that issue, yes, I'd much rather have, after November, a person in office who wants a two-state solution rather than that person who spent the last 2 or 3 years undermining the two-state solution. If you look on the domestic front, who would you rather have in place? A guy who protects this democracy, who defends our fighting men and women with dignity and respect, or the guy who says he wants to be an autocrat and be a dictator on day one. Or the guy who believes in the democracy, who believes in laying a foundation for the future, and who believes in protecting our men and women. So look on the domestic front, look on the global front, and just look at where we are today. Where would you like to see this country 5 years from now? Under the control of a person who believes in our pursuit of a more perfect union, or the person who ignores the Constitution and would like to suspend it for the future of our children and grandchildren? I think we're in good shape.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.